Vladimir Putin, who made some comments earlier today about what may be happening next.
They are creating momentary problems with oil products, but the situation will improve over time. This also affects Crimea. Work is underway to create a supply chain that would be difficult for the enemy to reach. Our responses will always be symmetrical. Wherever they try to strike Russian territory, we will respond symmetrically, only several times more powerfully. The enemy will feel it, they already do, I hope, and they will continue to feel it on an increasingly larger scale.
And so what do you think he means there by an increasingly larger scale? Because lots of concern is that Russia may be giving serious consideration to striking not just to elsewhere in Ukraine, but to the locations where these drones and missile factories and other things in Western Europe are located. What do you think?
Vladimir Putin is in the business of winning this war, but winning this war in a way that benefits Russia long term. And we know this because he said, I'm not looking for a ceasefire because it's a temporary solution. We need to address the root causes of this conflict, or else we risk the inevitability of the conflict reemerging 5 years, 10 years down the road. That's not long term stability. Russia needs this war to end finally on terms acceptable to Russia. The root causes of the conflict have to be addressed. This means that the current Ukrainian regime will not be in power. Zelensky will be dead or driven, arrested. Syrskyi, Zaluzhny, Budanov, all these people, they have very short futures. This is just a statement of fact. And Vladimir Putin at the St. Petersburg International Forum spoke about denazification, and he said, we know what this means. It means the total eradication of Banderist ideology. And Russia's not on a timeline, though. There's never been a Russian calendar. There's never been a moment where Russia says we have to do this by this date. That's been a Western thing, the pressure on people like me to come up with calendar dates. That's not a game Russia plays. They deal with objectives. Russia, I will just tell you, I just came from Russia. I was in the Donbass. I was in Zaporozhye. I couldn't go to Kherson because of drone activity. Very dangerous. Crimea was cut off. The Shamgar Bridge had been blown up. Couldn't cross it. To pretend that it's not a serious situation is ludicrous. The city of Melitopol was out without electricity and water for days. Gas stations were shut down, sandbagged up because of the danger of Ukrainian drones. This is real. The Highway of Death was called the Highway of Death because it's littered with the carcasses of vehicles and civilian vehicles, cars, trucks that are being struck by Ukrainian drones. My convoy on the way out was struck by Ukrainian drones. It's real. I mean, there's no doubt about this, but there's no panic on the part of the Russians. They have the situation 100% under control. We need to understand that this environment that we have, this information environment, is a ploy on the part of the West. It's information warfare being orchestrated by British intelligence, American intelligence, in coordination with Ukrainian intelligence, supported by the Europeans. The goal and objective is to create the impression in the lead up to the 20 September State Duma elections of Putin's weaknesses, Putin's frailty, that Russian victory is not inevitable. In fact, Russia could lose this, that the Russian economy isn't going to thrive. There is a depression. There's going to be an energy crisis. They deliberately hit places so they can get the photo op. You saw this at the G7 meeting when the Ukrainian FP1 drone, actually the Ukrainian FP1 drone didn't achieve the result it did. What happened is an FP1 drone was coming in to strike the Moscow refinery, and a Pantsir surface-to-air missile came under it, and it was the Russian Pantsir missile that struck the oil tank, blew it up, and the lid flipped in the air. And everybody goes, "Ooh, Ukrainian drone attack!" Nah, that was Russian air defense. Ukrainian drone hits with a 60 kilogram warhead. It goes pop, that's right there. Boom! That is the Russian air defense missile hitting the tank. It's not a Russian drone, a Ukrainian drone. And the thing is, that tank fire was put out, and there's nothing else to. I mean, this was a non-event, literally a non-event. It causes a hiccup. It causes the Russians to have to do certain things in terms of banning the sale of diesel globally, so you can maximize diesel availability in country in time for the harvest. People don't talk about that, but diesel is something that the combiners use. Also for the trucks, for things of that nature. But there is gas. The Russian gas reserves today are the same as they were before. Russia is just doesn't want to eat into their gas reserves. The gas lines that you see in every place but Crimea, they don't exist anymore. They'll happen. They'll blow up a refinery in Samara. They'll know exactly which, because each refinery is linked to a Russian company that's linked to distribution centers, so they know which gas stations receive the refined product, and then they just sit there and they wait. And next thing you know, there's a line because there's a limitation. The Russians haven't made the adjustment yet. And so there's no gasoline coming in. There's a line of people waiting for gas, and people take pictures of it and they go, oh my God, the Russians are in panic. Come back 3 days later. The line is gone. Why? Russia reallocated resources. The gas is there. Crisis is over. And that's what's happening right now is a reallocation. This is an information operation designed to make Russia look weak. It is causing temporary inconvenience for Russia. Russia has to make the adjustments. But Vladimir Putin is literally not panicked at all. Now let's flip it over because this is about Ukrainian drone war, drone dominance. We're told the Ukrainians are just doing everything with drones. Hell, they best drones in the world. The problem is that that's just not the case. Ukrainians are having great success because they are flooding the zone literally with tens of thousands of Western provided drones. And when you come in with mass, and much of these drones have good technology, AI terminal guidance, they use Starlink connectivity to make it hard to jam. So there's going to be successes, and they are enjoying successes. But when I spoke to Dmitry Rogozhin, he's the former CEO of Roscosmos, and he is the ring swarms of drones for the second consecutive day. I was in Moscow when that happened. Uh, you know, swarms of drones. The Russian people it's Mielich. That's just a loose change. It's nothing. There was no panic, nothing. The Russians will adjust to this. Moscow doesn't look like that. It's absurd in the extreme. But Rogozhin was sitting there talking about, some of the Ukrainian, initiatives, American-backed. For instance, the Hornet is a brainchild of Eric Schmidt, the former head of Google, who funded it, created the company that puts it out there. The Hornet problem's been resolved. The Starlink connectivity. Starlink sectors are shutting down right now. Let's not talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the reality that Russia has a solution to the Starlink problem, and that solution is being implemented. And the Ukrainians at this juncture don't have anything to offset it. They'll come back. The Rogozhin predicted they'll come back with mesh technology, basically it's internet connectivity that allow the Ukrainians to do some operations deep. The Russians already have a solution to that, and they're working the solution out, building it. I was in the Russian drone research centers talking to them about this solution. They were talking about their production plans. It's just a matter of producing the scale, getting it deployed to the troops that need it, and it's done. This drone war is something totally different. It's very dangerous, very bloody. The Russians talk about how effective the Ukrainians are. They have a lot of respect for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are inflicting casualties, not 25 to 35,000 a month. That's just crap. But they're killing people, hundreds a month. There's no doubt about it. The Russians are taking casualties. The Russians are killing 25 to 35,000 Ukrainians a month, however, and that's real. The Ukrainians know it. They're running out of manpower. The Ukrainians are surging in drone forces. They are unable to build enough infantry forces. And when they do, they send them on futile counterattacks where they get slaughtered. So the Ukrainians have a tactic called the drone wall. They come in and they'll forward deploy these drone attack posts, and they'll just flood the zone with drones. The problem is they're flooding the zone with drones where the Russians have ISR overwatch, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance overwatch. Here is where the Russians have an AI advantage. They're better at this than anybody in the world. We've been focusing on AI, on text analysis, ChatGPT, and things of that nature. The Russians have been doing it on command and control, basically synthesizing images and the ability to assess images real time and go into databases and look at things and have prediction and also immediate analysis. And one of the things the Russians are doing right now is they're plotting out where these Ukrainian drone command posts are. The Ukrainians are losing 8 to 10 command posts a day. Each command post has 10 or more drone operators. The drone operators take 4 weeks to get the basic training, another 6 months to become good at it. And the Ukrainians are losing 80 to 100 drone operators a day. 80 to 100 drone operators a day are being lost by the Ukrainians. This is the reality. So even when the Ukrainians get a drone wall put up there, that drone wall is immediately vectored. There's a unit in Russia called Rubicon. read about it. Even the Ukrainians acknowledge when Rubicon shows up, it's over because Rubicon comes in and kills all the drone operators. That's what Rubicon does for a living. And all the Ukrainian drone operators are dying, and they're hard to replace. The technology that everybody's relying upon. New York Times just published an article talking about, a secret German factory somewhere in southern Germany producing these high-tech German drones with AI and all this stuff. Read the article. It's not a secret German factory. It's Helsing SE. We know the drone they're producing, HF-1. The thing about the HF-1, and 4,000 of them were provided by the Germans in 2024. About 2,000 were attempted to be used in 2025. The rest are in the warehouse. The Ukrainians refuse to use it. The AI doesn't work, and there's a very high failure rate on launch. What does that mean? If it fails to launch, I just told you the Russians have ISR surveillance dominance. That means they're looking at AI is looking for any deviation, instantaneously picking up a deviation and then targeting it with Fab 500s, Iskanders, you name it. So the Ukrainians are good at finding windows of vulnerability in the ISR lane. So they will have a period of time where they can leave their cover, assemble their drone, prepare the drone, launch the drone, and get back. Because what you don't want to be is seen. If you're seen, you're dead. This is why they're losing so many, because the Russians are seeing them as they launch their drones. So if you have a drone, you come out, you've timed it. You're going to assemble it, you're going to power it up. It's got AI that's a little bit more complicated. Fails to launch. You're now in the middle of freaking nowhere. I mean, exposed. You might get another shot. Recycle, fail to launch. 75% failure to launch rate.
Wow.
Those Ukrainian drones are destroyed and the operators are destroyed. The command post is destroyed. That mistake cost a dozen lives. And this happened over the Ukrainian special forces who operate these things will literally not use these drones. Now there's a new drone, the XF2 or something of that nature, an X-Wing drone that, again, people like Gilbert Doctorow are selling as, this is high-tech German cutting edge stuff. It's an analog of the Russian Lancet, which was available early on in 2022. It's the same thing but worse because again, it doesn't work. Ukrainians will not use it. Ukrainian Special Forces says we don't want it because failure to launch means instant death. If the thing doesn't work, Colonel, you've heard this about the AK-47, the M16. I mean, everybody loves the M16. Hell, I loved it on the rifle range. I was an extra high expert every time I shot because when that M16 is clean and I point and I aim, it hits what I'm shooting. Wow, it's wonderful. Wind blows, dust comes in, jams. I'm dead. Meanwhile, the AK-47 gets thrown in a river, has gravel and dirt and mud sludge through it, and they wake it, shake it, chamber, and shoot, and it shoots every single time. The Russian drones work every single time. Because the Ukrainians have ISR too, they have Russian intelligence, they have American intelligence looking for these things. But when the Russians find the window of vulnerability, they come out, load, launch, get back in, they're safe. And now their drone goes in and kills. Russia is winning the drone war. And if you're winning the drone war, you're winning the war. This is why Russia is advancing. Scott, they're only advancing a couple kilometers a day. I mean, how could a snail could go advance further than the Russian? Well, a snail doesn't have to fight through the gray zone of drone death. This is the reality. There is a gray zone. For a Russian unit to advance a kilometer means that it has already advanced 20 to 30 kilometers or more through a gray zone of death. That means that the Russians have to achieve drone dominance over the gray zone and then project that drone dominance onto the Ukrainians, which they're doing across the entire battlefield. There's not a single place on this battlefield where the Ukrainians have the strategic initiative. Yes, they launch counterattacks. They go, they punched 10 kilometers deep into the Russian lines. No, they didn't. They punched 10 kilometers deep into the gray zone, and then they all died. And then the Russians came in, swept up, and kept advancing. This is the reality of the war on the front lines. Russia is winning, dominating, prevailing. The Ukrainians don't have a solution. They're out of infantry. They were trying to replace it by throwing 80,000 drone operators in there to get the drone wall, but they're losing 80 to 100 of them a day. They're irreplaceable. The drone factories, meanwhile, what Putin talked about, you hit us, we take you out. Lindsey Graham was just in Kiev. He's passed. But there was a photograph of him smiling, holding a Ukrainian drone. Hey, I got a drone here. Look how good I am. I'm wonderful. That factory no longer exists. Now, it's probably because somebody on Lindsey Graham's team made a mistake or the Russian AI looked at the photographs that Lindsey Graham published and was able to identify through their photo database
Mm.
exactly the place where this was, but they took it out. It no longer exists. All those drones that were being built, all them stacked up, they're gone, ladies and gentlemen, finished. And that's not the only drone factory that's taken out. Every major drone factory in Ukraine is being taken out as we speak. Think about it. You want to build a Patriot assembly plant in Ukraine?
Yeah.
2,000 square feet of new construction. You don't think the Russians are going to
I
detect?
see that. Right.
Russia
Um,
is destroying the totality of Ukraine's industrial infrastructure. There's nothing that can replace it. This is the reality.
Yeah, and the last one I want to talk about here because I'm out of a little bit out of time here where I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to go ahead and show you this one. Oh yeah, there's the infamous, yeah, one of the last. I think that's his last picture ever seen. Not something that'll go down well in history. But speaking of Lindsey Graham, Michael McCall, Representative McCall, was kind of trying to give a not pep talk, say something nice about him. But he's going to now says, I'm going to take what he was going to do and we're going to carry it forward to the demise of Russia.
We were planning to introduce a sanction bill together this coming week. I will still introduce that bill. The Senate will. And I think in his honor that we owe it to Lindsey Graham to pass that tough Russian sanctions bill. Ukraine. I have to say also, the NATO summit had a big impression on Ukraine. Zelensky was very upbeat because two things happened there. One, President Trump agreed to these licensing agreements so that Ukraine can build their own interceptor, Patriot interceptors, to take down the ballistic missile threat, which is their biggest vulnerability right now. But secondly, I think most importantly, the morale boost. As I was on the front lines, the morale boost to the troops who are, by the way, Martha, winning now. Who would have thought that 4 years ago, that they'd be winning the war 4 years later? But also the political will of the Ukrainians and President Zelensky walking out of that meeting, that was a game changer.
A game changer. And McCall was on the front lines in the Ukraine side is winning. I probably don't need to ask, but I'm going to give you the chance anyway. What do you say to that?
Horse hockey, I think that's a term that we're allowed to use. Horse manure, cow dung. And he's Texas, I think he's from, so he'll understand these terms. He's a liar, straight up liar. The licensing agreement isn't going to happen. First of all, there's only one missile that has a chance of shooting down an Iskander-M, and that's the PAC-3, MES, I think it is. Ukraine will never assemble that. Hell, we have trouble assembling here in the United States. We're talking about pumping up the production rate from 600 to 2,000. We don't have enough parts. We don't have enough seekers. We don't have enough anything. So the idea that we're suddenly going to divert all this, subcomponent capacity to Ukraine to watch it get blown up by a Russian counterstrike is absurd. There will be, we may ship some Patriot MES missiles to Ukraine. They'll be blown up before they get put into operation. But the missile that they're looking at is a PAC-2 GEMT, sort of an improved PAC-2. It can't shoot down the Iskander. It can't shoot down the Kinzhal. It can't shoot down, the Zircon. It can't shoot down. Nothing can shoot down the Oreshnik. So it's basically going in to shoot down some cruise missiles, and that's it. Right now, Germany has a licensing agreement to produce these missiles in Germany. The first missiles should come off the production line by the end of this year. The best Ukraine's going to get is to get Germany to divert some of this production to Ukraine. But again, these are missiles that don't solve the operational problem. The problem is Iskander-M's. Ukraine has nothing to shoot down an Iskander-M. They will never shoot them down. The problem is Zircons. They can't shoot them down. The problem is Kinzhals. They can't shoot them down. They're not going to get the weapons to shoot them down. The thing is, Zelensky knows this. He was sat there. Trump blew some smoke at him in Ankara, and Zelensky smiled. But now Zelensky's running around in a panic saying, you need to follow through on this. We need these missiles. And he's realizing that the best case, if everything works properly, you're not even going to be able to turn ground for a year or more. I mean, the licensing alone, there's just steps that by law have to go through. Quality control checks and things of that nature that just aren't in place. Not going to happen. The German facility was broken ground on 2022. It's now 2027, and they may produce a missile by the end of 2027. That's 5 years. You might be able to accelerate this for Ukraine for like 3 years, but that's it. And that means that if the war stopped today and everything was allowed to happen, Ukraine wouldn't be able to assemble a missile for 3 years. Zelensky realizes that's not good enough. So now he's running around. And McCall, a morale booster. It's actually, this is devastating for the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians that know understand they've been abandoned, that they were lied to. Zelensky's starting to panic, and that goodwill that Trump had towards him, because Trump is a very shallow man, that goodwill will dissipate the moment Zelensky starts to call him out and say, "You promised me something and you're failing to deliver." Trump's going to say how ungrateful you are. Remember that Oval Office meeting that took place back in August of 2024 or 2025? You're going to see that again. This is absurd. McCall is a moron. He's an idiot. He's stupid. He's criminal. And sadly, it's going to cost the American taxpayer, billions of dollars. But worse, it's going to cost Ukraine millions of lives, because extending this war along the lines being proposed by McCall, injecting false hope into, a situation that can't be won, can't be recovered, is just going to require, it's going to result in the death of the Ukrainians and literally the physical destruction of the Ukrainian nation. Vladimir Putin's already talking about, Sumy being a Russian city, Kharkiv a Russian city, Odessa. We're not talking about simply buffer zones here. We're talking about a reclassification of what Novaya Rossiya is, new Russian territories are. These are Russian cities. They will be part of Russia in a post-conflict, which means Ukraine's getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we speak.
Yeah, and I don't see anything on the battlefield that's going to prevent that from happening. Even if it takes a lot longer, there's just not the assets on the Ukrainian side or on the American side to go along with it. Listen, I'll have to cut it short right now. I actually have to go and talk to Stas Krapivnik, who's told me, just sent me a text and said to tell you hi and to give you his regards. But we appreciate you coming on today very much and sharing both these things. It's been really an illuminating show altogether. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.